5 minutes before Salman Abedi detonated his bomb, killing 22 people at an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester Arena, he was spotted by Kyle Lawler, an 18-year-old security guard. And after the bombing, Kyle told the Inquiry, "I just had a bad feeling about him." Kyle had been suspicious, but he didn't act, he didn't raise the alarm. Why? Here's what he said. "I felt unsure about what to do." That's what he told the Inquiry. "And being branded a racist, it made me hesitant." 22 people were killed. This is a lesson in ignoring suspicion, and it's one that the West needs to learn urgently.
This is a very good point. For context, for those who may not remember, for those who might not know even, this is what he's talking about. This is the Manchester bomber, Salman Abedi, who murdered 22 people in suicide attack. He went to the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester Arena, where Ariana Grande was giving a concert, and he went in there and blew himself up, killing 22 people and injuring many more. He received a life sentence for this. These are things that are in very clear, immediate, recent memory of Europeans, of people, of British people, of people in England. But people just, people somehow forget about these things and explain them away as, a tragedy that unfolded, that could have been prevented, but that is nevertheless just a case of extremism. On the 22nd of May, 2017, 22 people were killed and 1,017 injured in an Islamic terrorist suicide bombing at Manchester Arena in Manchester, England. The attack was perpetrated by Islamic extremist Salman Abedi and aided by his brother Hasham Abedi at 22:31 following a concert by the American pop singer Ariana Grande. It was the deadliest act of terrorism and the first suicide bombing in the United Kingdom since the 7th July 2005 London bombings. Carrying a large backpack, Abedi detonated an improvised explosive device containing triacetone triperoxide and nuts and bolts serving as shrapnel. He is now on life sentence, having been found guilty on all counts. And he pledged allegiance to the Islamic State, to ISIS, and ISIS took responsibility for it and said that a soldier of the caliphate has detonated an explosive device among a crowd of the crusaders in the British city of Manchester. This is what Islam does. None of this would be happening if you didn't have Muslims in your country. None of this would be happening if you didn't have a mass Muslim immigration, if you didn't have Islamic presence and the rise of Islam in your country. Different people have different kinds of extremism. Different people do different kinds of unbecoming bad and horrible things. With Islam, the horrible things that you receive are like this. You can have your Christians who do bad things in a Christian country. When you invite Muslims who do bad things, you will have many Muslims praising them and making excuses for them for what they did. You don't have to have this evil, this filth, this bloodlust in your country by inviting these people over.
I've had phone calls this week from friends, family, colleagues. Some called to praise me for my courage, others to question my sanity for coming back here, and one or two who begged me not to speak with you tonight. Why? In what way does it take courage to come and speak at a student debating society? Why would it be foolish for my safety to debate at the invitation of a Muslim woman with two Muslim men and a mock Victorian Catholic knight? We all know why.
Which bit is mock?
Well, the Victorian. We all know why. It's why there's quite a lot of security here. It's why there's a bit of electricity in the air. It's why this debate generated news coverage before it even happened. It is because of Islam. Now, I'm not a Muslim. For the purposes of full disclosure, I'm a Jew and a Briton.
Whoa!
So I'm not here to speak for Muslims and what individual Muslims do or don't think or feel or believe. I'm not here to
He admits he's a Jew.
argue over Quranic verses and hadith. I'm here tonight to represent the other side of this debate, Western values. I'm here to talk about how Islam has encroached on our lives. I would love not to be here, especially at this time. I would love never to talk about this topic again, never to talk about Islam. It's not my faith, it's not my ideology. But over and over again, it has confronted me, coming for my life, for your lives. I am not motivated by hate.
Notice what he just said. Islam comes for my life and for your lives. That is quite a statement to make here in Britain.
Whatever those people outside say.
For context, what he's just pointing out here, there are people outside this building, people protesting, people threatening. There were groups of people outside shouting pro-Palestine, pro-Intifada, pro-Islamic terrorism kind of stuff. I'm sorry, if you shout pro-Intifada, you're shouting pro-Islamic terrorism. Intimidating people who come here to debate against Islam, including, of course, Tommy Robinson, because Tommy Robinson is here, who is also speaking. There's a mob gathered outside to intimidate him and making death threats against him at a free speech union place.
The only person in this debate who has made physical threats was over there. No, thank you. I am motivated by love. Love.
He wants to, the Muslim. I really wonder what he said now. Now I want to watch the whole thing.
For freedom, love for life, love for debate, for discussion, love for the West. The West is a civilization of defiant liberty and fearless truth-telling, and that is why I'm here now. Now, I often ask people what their first conscious memory of Islam was. For me, it was as a child of 8 or 9 when Salman Rushdie published the Satanic Verses. What followed was a global eruption of Islamic fury, book burnings in the streets, a death fatwa from Ayatollah Khomeini, and a trail of terror that crossed decades and borders. My own father, a bookseller who believed in the fundamental Western right to read and write even offensive ideas, was forced to sell copies from behind the counter for fear of his own life. Translators were stabbed, publishers shot. And over 30 years later, in 2022, a young Muslim assassin, Hadi Matar, nearly murdered the elderly Rushdie on stage in New York, blinding him in one eye.
And Salman Rushdie still got up and said, I don't really care, I'm going to continue. Nobody can really silence me. Since the Islamic Empire, the Islamic Caliphate fell, it's only been 100 years or so. And for the first time now, we are in a time where Islam is no longer an imperialist power, no longer a united house that can invade and that can declare war and run slavery freely across multiple populations and all that. Islam is subdued thanks to the West. Thank God for the West. Islam was subdued and turned into nation states, into different smaller states. And now it is only these last 100 years where we are basically in a new time and a new experiment where Muslim nations are making an attempt at being actual nations, and most of them are doing a terrible job. Most of them are failed nations. And Muslims coming into the West and living in the West, and we can all see how it goes, right? People want to publish books in the West, and people are threatened for that. People want to say things in the West. People receive fatwas for that. People want to freely express themselves in the West. They are threatened and they are killed for that. With Muslims, with Islam, approving of such punishments, of such reactions. We have people drawing cartoons in the West to mock Islam. In response, you have Muslims going into the place and shooting it all up. And then Muslim countries and Muslim populations justifying it. It's a Good thing to remember that when the Charlie Hebdo massacre happened, when the cartoonists at Charlie Hebdo were brutally murdered and massacred for daring to draw cartoons, the Muslim people around the world didn't say, "Oh no, this is terrible. We absolutely reject violence." They basically said that the cartoonists asked for it. The protesters around the world, and the Muslim countries around the world, rather than condemning the actions, condemned the drawing of Muhammad cartoons. Yet we still do it. Yet I still do it. Yet others still do it. Because people who believe in the freedoms and the values that we have shouldn't be submitting to this disgusting filth of a system and religion and its adherents. But that is what Islam is. And what kind of a stupid mind, what kind of a completely idiotic mind is ruling over the Western world that you see the immediate results of Islam and that you still think, oh, and never mind, let's invite them over here. Let's open our doors, open our borders here.
Because he wrote a story. Yet, in the face of this medieval intolerance, Rushdie struck back with the West's greatest weapons, his pen and his mind, writing a new book, Knife. He fought violence with art, Western. They fought violence with art, Western. They fought art with violence, Islamic. But you don't need to be a writer to have suffered the violent intrusion of Islam into your life. On September the 11th, 2001, 19 hijackers cried Allahu Akbar as they murdered nearly 3,000 people in the name of Islam, flying planes into the Twin Towers. On the 7th of July, 2005, 4 British Muslim suicide bombers slaughtered 52 commuters on London's tube and a bus, declaring, "We are at war and I am a soldier." In 2013, Michael Adebilajo beheaded the young British soldier Lee Rigby in broad daylight on a Woolwich street, and then proudly told police and cameras, his hands dripping in blood, "I'm a soldier of Allah." Theo van Gogh, stabbed, shot, nearly decapitated in Amsterdam for criticizing Islam. His killer pinned a note to the body declaring it was done, quotes, "by the law that commands me to cut off the head of anyone who insults Allah and his prophet."
Can you give me examples from the scripture, directly, in context, properly, that would advise or point to the actions of any of these specific people?
This is the crux of this point. I don't need to give you those examples because all of these men who slaughtered Westerners, who slaughtered other Muslims, gave their quotes from your holy book.
Isn't this a funny thing? You bring up, you mention all these Islamic terrorists, and it is a pattern. There is clearly a pattern. These are Islamic terrorists. In fact, the majority of deadly, religiously motivated terrorists, and I think even the majority of violent or deadly terrorist attacks around the world are led by Islam, not by any other religion, not even by any other political ideology. They are led by Islamic terrorism. But somehow you are supposed to prove that this is connected to Islam. You are somehow supposed to prove that these attacks are Islamically justified. Well, how about we do not care if it's Islamically justified or not? How about we say that from now on? We do not give a single damn if it is Islamically justified or not. It is not our job to demonstrate that it is Islamically justified or not justified. It is Islamically done. Islam is the problem. You can take your religion out of here, get rid of it, and then deal with that question. How about no? Maybe you Muslims should go and discuss whether this is appropriate according to Islam or not.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali, no thank you, who worked with Van Gogh. She's lived with round-the-clock protection ever since. She was a Muslim who committed the crime of leaving that faith and criticizing it. Are you starting to see the pattern yet? In 2006, Ilan Halimi, a French Jew, was kidnapped, tortured for 24 days, and burnt alive by a gang who shouted, guess what? Allahu Akbar. A rabbi and 3 small Jewish children gunned down at a school in Toulouse. A kosher supermarket in Paris, 4 Jews executed. A teacher at Batley Grammar School here, hounded into hiding by Muslim mobs baying for his death for showing a cartoon. Charlie Hebdo, 3 gay friends in Reading, David Amos MP, Streatham, London Bridge, Westminster Bridge, Parsons Green, Manchester Victoria Station, journalists, gay men, Jews, MPs, commuters, police, ordinary citizens. The list goes on and on. Dishonest people will tell you that this is not Islam, but extremism. Extreme what? Extreme Jainism, extreme Quakerism. The 2 converts to Islam opposite cannot deny that those killers were Muslim, following their Islamic beliefs. They said it themselves. The list of Islamic contributions to our Western life demonstrates that human cost, the human cost that makes people in here afraid to even talk about Islam. That's why we're suspicious of Islam. And don't worry, I know that Islam is not all violence. It's also political. In 1928, Hassan al-Banna founded the Muslim Brotherhood, a disciplined movement to reverse the fading of traditional Islamic life in Egypt, building an entire alternative Islamic society. I have another couple of pages, which I hope you'll give me the courtesy of. Building an entire Islamic society, mosques, schools, charities, youth groups, businesses, institutions, which they then spread to the West. And their devised strategy was one of patient Islamic transformation from within. A civilizational jihad. Don't worry, that is not a far-right name made up by Tommy Robinson or me. That's actually what they called it. And we know that because the FBI seized their 1991 explanatory memorandum setting out the plan to settle in the West, build Islamic centers and spaces, infiltrate institutions, and work until, quote, Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions.
Which is what the Quran says, by the way.
No, thank you. Nearly a century later, they are widely accepted across Europe and in the US and much of the West as a dangerous threat to democracy. So Islam...
Which is very wild. They are banned across rich oil countries on the Arabian Peninsula, but they are happily allowed and embraced in the West. What the hell is going on?
Doesn't only attack with bombs. Sometimes it uses our own freedoms and our own land and our own institutions against us. And Islam's ambition to spread is not always so subtle. Historically, Islam is an ideology of conquest and expansionism. After Muhammad's death in 632, its armies burst out of Arabia and within a century conquered much of the ancient Christian world, the Middle East, North Africa, Egypt, Syria. They pushed into Spain, Al-Andalusi, where's that name from? They reached France, halted at Tours in 732.
Al-Andalusi, of course, is from Andalusia, Spain, after the Muslims invaded it and claimed it for themselves. Through Islamic conquests, Islam began as a violent imperialist religion that expanded rapidly from the Arabian Peninsula to most of where Muslims are today, actually, within just 2 centuries. It spread through violence and conquests. That's what it did. And it kept conquering and kept fighting until the West, thank God for the West, crushed it. For now. It can always rise back up. Which is why we should be all cautious of it and not allow it into the Western countries.
Oh, the gentleman give way.
Yes.
Reminded of what happened in 1492.
Thank you for the reminder.
Got it that the Muslims were expelled along with the Jews from Spain by Christians.
They were indeed.
These sorts of wrongs have happened between all religions throughout history.
And 14th century...
So what? It was a Christian country. Why wouldn't they expel them? After being ruled over brutally for centuries.
Sorry, excuse me. Absolutely. And if you would like to invite me back, Sir Rees-Mogg, I would be delighted to debate your religion and your faith and the wrongs that it has done my people as well. But that is for another evening. Wherever they've conquered, Jews and Christians were reduced to dhimmis, defeated peoples living under submission, tax, and Islamic supremacy. Because at Islam's core is political, theological dominance, not private, internal faith. They may try to hide it, but it is written in blood across the centuries until today. For every other ideology, we can be proud of the positives and still suspicious of the negatives. But some people are so quick to list all the great things they say Islam's contributed. The second speaker, that he gave some money once to an old man who was in need. But they utterly reject any Islamic connection to all the dreadful things that I've mentioned tonight. The bits they like, those are all Islam. But the bits they don't like, well, not Islam. Totally binary. In an era when being non-binary is all the rage. Everything today is on a spectrum, except Islam. So, I'm asking you to believe your own eyes, to accept your own survival instincts, apply the same rational thought to Islam that you would and should.
That was well played, actually.
To any other set of ideas and behaviors. Kyle Lawler, that Manchester Arena security guard, will live forever with the heavy weight of ignoring his suspicion. Don't be Kyle Lawler. Don't be afraid to call out an urgent danger that you instinctively identify just because you're afraid. What we have in the West is worth protecting. Our freedoms, our culture, our ethics, this university, this country, all of it. And it can compete, it can win. But only if you stay curious, stay intelligent, stay suspicious, especially of Islam.
The funny thing is, I know Jonathan, and I met with him, I sat with him, I had dinner with him and all that. And at some point, his opinion on Islam was a little bit more mild, and he was more of the idea that Islam might be redeemable and might not be it might be bad, but might not be as horrible as people make it to be. And he talked to me about it. I must say I take a little bit credit for sitting down and changing his mind on that. But it seems that he has also done plenty of research to then conclude that Islam is actually much, much worse than he thought.
Stay away from Islam.
Stay away from Islam.
Stay away from Islam. Stay away from Islam.
Stay away from Islam.
Stay away from Islam. Stay